Have you observed how genuine transformation makes those closest to you uneasy? They rarely voice their discomfort directly. Instead, they cloak it in humor, offer guidance disguised as worry, or respond with that telling silence when you share something profound. What's truly occurring beneath the surface is straightforward. Your intellectual growth disrupts their established comfort. Nobody welcomes being compelled to examine their own stagnation. You might be experiencing this very phenomenon right now. You've begun thinking in new ways, behaving differently, perhaps questioning beliefs you once embraced without hesitation. Suddenly, isolation sets in. You feel misunderstood, criticized. What remains unspoken, what Nietzsche grasped more profoundly than most, is that this isolation is the cost of cultivating mental fortitude. Not ordinary strength, but a strength so profound, so authentic, that it unsettles others. It frightens them. Without uttering a single word, it reveals the fragility of those still living unconsciously. But what drives this reaction? Because a genuinely formidable mind poses a threat to collective ordinariness. Nietzsche was unambiguous about this truth. When you choose independent thought, forge your own principles, and reject the comfortable illusion of predetermined answers, you become a threat to established systems, a threat to others, and crucially, a threat to who you once were. This message serves as an invitation, a provocation. It isn't intended for the complacent, nor for those seeking simple solutions. It's crafted for you, exhausted by being prisoner to your own doubts, sensing an approaching internal transformation, and prepared to construct something indestructible. A mind that cannot be controlled, a mind that intimidates precisely because it refuses to yield. So, if you're prepared for this journey, solitary, demanding, yet utterly revolutionary, remain here, because Nietzsche's teachings will challenge you profoundly, but they may also liberate you completely. Following this encounter, your thinking will be forever altered. Nietzsche transcended mere philosophy. He became a dissector of the human psyche, a figure who possessed the audacity to peer into the void of existence, and rather than simply confront it, to plunge headfirst into its depths. And it is precisely within that void, within that internal turmoil that most desperately avoid, that he discovered the wellspring of authentic power. For Nietzsche understood that it is not through tranquility, security, or structure that a human being undergoes metamorphosis. It is through agony. It is through dissent. It is through disorder. He proclaimed, "You must have chaos within you to give birth to a dancing star." This is no mere poetic flourish. This is clinical observation. This means that if you seek to construct an unbreakable psyche, you must discard the naive notion that it will emerge through ease, hollow encouragement, or cheerful mantras. No, genuine fortitude is forged when you confront anguish without retreat, when you cease demanding that life accommodate you and begin demanding that you grow stronger. Reflect on the moments of your greatest development. Did they occur when all was well? Or did they emerge when you were broken, adrift, without direction, forced to reconstruct yourself through sheer determination? Nietzsche understood that suffering was not existence's error, but rather its primary catalyst. He did not glorify anguish. He wielded it as an instrument. And when you can transform your relationship with pain, with defeat, with isolation, you begin to cultivate something extraordinary, an unconquerable spirit. And it is precisely then that the world begins to fear you. For while the masses flee from disorder, you will master the art of thriving within it. While others plead for mediocrity, you will forge magnificence. But this metamorphosis demands a savage severing from everything you were conditioned to believe about strength. True strength is not perpetual smiling. It is not manufactured emotional mastery. True strength is weathering the unendurable and emerging more formidable than before. Yet Nietzsche recognized that chaos alone is insufficient. It can annihilate you if you lack an inner foundation, a core. This is why, in what follows, we must examine the most pivotal moment in Nietzschean thought, when he destroys God and places upon your shoulders the complete burden of existential accountability. For when there is no longer a heaven to which you can look, it is within your own being that the cosmos must be born. When Nietzsche proclaimed, "God is dead," he was not rejoicing. He was sounding an alarm that many continue to misunderstand today. What he destroyed was not divinity itself. He destroyed the delusion that some higher power orchestrates everything, the delusion that existence follows a blueprint, possesses predetermined significance, or serves a purpose dictated from beyond. The death of God marks the end of all excuses. And this is terrifying, because until that moment, it was simple to delegate responsibility for your existence to external forces. It was reassuring to believe that everything happens for a reason, that pain serves some divine purpose, that there exists a greater good that will ultimately justify all suffering. Nietzsche savagely rips away this comforting veil. He stares directly into your soul and declares, "You are isolated. There is no prefabricated meaning. Now you must become the architect." And here begins the authentic construction of an indomitable mind, because most individuals crumble when they realize they stand alone against chaos, without instructions, without certainties, with no one to hold accountable. But those who possess the courage to face this reality without collapse, they begin to forge an unshakable consciousness. Through God's death, Nietzsche hurls you into the abyss of absolute freedom. You cannot simply follow directives. You must create principles. You cannot merely comply. You must transcend yourself. This marks the birth of ruthless independence. And with it comes the burden. Everything now rests on your shoulders. There is no more forgiveness. There is no more deliverance. Either you construct yourself or you perish. But here lies the revelation. This freedom that terrifies you is also the greatest source of power you can possess. When you truly comprehend that no savior will arrive, something within you ignites. A flame that compels you to rise even while wounded, that forces you to think independently, to feel authentically, to act not because authority declares it correct, but because you have chosen it to be so. It is through this rupture with existential dependencies that Nietzsche lays the foundation for something even more magnificent, the emergence of a revolutionary way of being, a type of human who does not live by the herd's regulations, who requires neither validation nor permission. A being who creates their own ethics, who surpasses their own boundaries, and exists as a creator. A being that terrifies the weak because it compels them to see themselves as they truly are. This being bears a name. Nietzsche called it the Übermensch, the Superman. And it is this figure we must now explore. Because if you desire to build a mind so resilient that nothing can shatter it, you must understand how to become this being who exists above convention, guided solely by their own will to power. Let us delve into this transformation. Nietzsche rejected the notion of humanity's gradual passive development. He championed disruption, revolutionary change, and the destruction that creates. This is precisely why he envisioned the Übermensch, the Superman. This isn't about comic book heroes or supernatural abilities. The Übermensch represents someone who has transcended all constraints that shackle the common person. Shame, submission, collective morality, the hunger for approval. The Übermensch doesn't crave acceptance. He doesn't request permission to live. He forges his own principles and abides by them, even when this sets him against all of humanity. This is exactly what makes his psyche indestructible. His strength isn't dependent on others' expectations. He doesn't require outside validation to confirm his worth. He stands complete unto himself. He draws power from his own will to dominate, the profound drive to mold reality according to his vision. This is the crucial understanding. The Übermensch doesn't conform to the world. He forces meaning upon the world. He doesn't pursue ease. He pursues excellence. He doesn't wonder, am I permitted? He wonders, does this match my worth? This transformation in viewpoint revolutionizes everything. When you begin seeing yourself as an architect rather than a subordinate, your thoughts, actions, and emotions undergo complete metamorphosis. Yet, here's the challenge. Achieving this state demands sacrifice. You must eliminate those aspects of yourself that still plead for validation. You must confront the agony of being an outsider. You must shoulder the burden of constructing your identity from nothing, without assurances, without encouragement, without crowd recognition. Most people lack this capacity. They surrender before beginning. They retreat to the comfort of prefabricated beliefs, doctrines, and regulations others crafted for them. The journey toward the Übermensch is solitary, and Nietzsche understood this intimately. He existed on society's periphery, miscomprehended, labeled insane, cut off from the world he sought to emancipate. Yet within that isolation, he discovered his liberation. This is what you must grasp. As your mind grows stronger, you drift further from the multitudes. The higher your ascent, the greater the disturbance you cause. Constructing the Übermensch represents the most savage and transformative ordeal anyone can undergo. It demands you obliterate everything that isn't authentically yours. Everything forced upon you by a corrupted culture, by a civilization that celebrates compliance and condemns genuineness. Only after this destruction can you begin creation. But this building doesn't occur among crowds. It happens in quietude, in retreat, in the profound isolation that divides the powerful from the powerless. This is precisely why, in the coming section, we'll explore the most overlooked yet most potent element of this journey: the solitude of strength. The reality is that to become unshakable, you must master walking alone. Few possess this readiness, do you? If there's one truth no one reveals about developing mental fortitude, it's this: the stronger you grow, the deeper your isolation becomes. This isn't because you choose seclusion, it's because the world no longer knows how to handle you. Nietzsche expressed this plainly. The liberated mind, the one who abandons conventional morality, who rejects simple answers, who thinks independently, inevitably separates from the masses. This separation causes pain, but this suffering is essential. Genuine development demands space, and growth is impossible while bound to others' expectations. Most people exist within an invisible collective where every thought faces scrutiny, every deed gets measured against others' responses. You've grown accustomed to group movement, group thinking, feeling safe because others surround you. But Nietzsche proposes the reverse. He rips you from that security and casts you into the wilderness. In that wasteland, there's no applause, no commendation, no guidance. Only you exist, alongside your uncertainties, your wounds, your terrors, your urge to surrender. Here begins the true examination. What will most people do? They'll flee back. They'll once again hide behind their facades. They'll pretend they don't feel, don't think, don't perceive. But you, if you genuinely wish to become someone unbreakable, must remain. You must withstand the silence that exposes your true nature. Nietzsche declared, "The individual must perpetually battle against being consumed by the collective. If you attempt this, you will frequently feel isolated and occasionally frightened. But no cost is excessive for owning yourself." This is the core truth, the complete ownership of one's being. It stands as the rarest and most formidable accomplishment any individual can achieve. For when you genuinely own yourself, external forces lose their grip on you. Others cannot determine your value. No external power can diminish you. Yet this self-ownership bears the burden of isolation. Relationships will dissolve. Misunderstanding becomes your constant companion. You'll be labeled proud, peculiar, unreachable. Forces will conspire to drag you back into conformity. They'll brand you mad, heartless, unfeeling. This is the cost of remaining untamed. The price of independence from validation. The expense of refusing to become a reflection of others' expectations. Here lies the unvarnished reality. If solitude terrifies you, liberation remains beyond your reach. Genuine freedom demands abandonment of emotional dependencies, of comforting delusions, of relationships built on mutual benefit alone. This is why Nietzsche viewed isolation as a gift, a proving ground where authentic identity finally finds room to breathe. But this liberated consciousness, this elevated being, doesn't merely walk in solitude. It begins perceiving what remains hidden to others. And with this vision comes the second unavoidable consequence, the clash with ordinariness. For when strength begins to emerge, the collective ordinary senses it, and it strikes back. This brings us to our next crucial point, the threat of collective ordinariness. The world doesn't hunt those who blend in. It hunts those bold enough to rise above. Nietzsche harbored no fear of dictators, despotic rulers, or open oppressors. What he dreaded and attacked with philosophical rage was the insidious and destructive force of collective ordinariness, that invisible machinery that maintains universal mediocrity, that punishes independent thought, that celebrates compliance, while masquerading fear as moral virtue. Real oppression, in Nietzsche's view, doesn't descend from positions of power. It emerges from all directions. It comes from the masses who insist you stay diminished so they need not expand. This is precisely what unfolds when you begin to distinguish yourself, when your intellect sharpens, your character solidifies, your presence becomes more unsettling. You create disturbance not through wrongdoing, but through rarity. You shatter expectations, and society despises those who break its patterns. Collective ordinariness cannot tolerate individual excellence, for that excellence illuminates the shadows of common existence. Nietzsche termed this the morality of the enslaved, a value system constructed by those who, incapable of achieving distinction, chose to reverse all standards. They converted strength into pride, aspiration into greed, self-reliance into indifference. Through this reversal, they established a moral framework that shields the powerless while condemning the powerful. But make no error, this stems not from kindness, but from bitterness. The powerless don't seek salvation. They seek the destruction of the powerful. Therefore, when you begin your liberation, they launch their assault, sometimes openly, sometimes through subtlety, through glances, through silence, through mockery. But their message rings clear. Return to the herd. You're making us feel inadequate. And you are. Without intention. Simply through authentic existence. Nietzsche recognized that most people exist in crippling conformity, a life molded by terror, shame, and submission. Anyone who challenges this condition appears as a danger. But don't be deceived. Ordinariness doesn't assault through force. It assaults through volume, through agreement, through the power of repetition. It seeks to create self-doubt. It attempts to convince you that nonconformity equals error. It deploys every social weapon, from humiliation to ostracism, to force your submission. And here, many surrender. They cannot endure being the outsider, the troublemaker, the proud one. But Nietzsche would offer you a different label, essential. For while society circles around recycled thoughts, manufactured longings, and convenient truths, it is the strong individual who delivers the vital discomfort necessary for renewal. Your uniqueness serves as the catalyst for change, but it also becomes the focus of opposition. Possessing strength, thinking independently, living with autonomy, These constitute acts of rebellion against collective ordinariness. And like all rebellions, preparation is required. Armament is necessary, not physical armament, mental armament. And this is exactly what we address now in our conclusion. For there exists a tremendous cost in developing a mind so formidable it inspires fear, but there also exists a reward beyond anyone's power to steal. In what follows, you will grasp both the price and the power of becoming unbreakable. You've reached this point. That alone distinguishes you from the masses. Most would have abandoned this message at the first challenge. They would have retreated at the initial discomfort. They would have dismissed it the instant they understood this isn't content designed to flatter the ego. This is a summons to action, a rallying cry for those prepared to abandon comfortable delusions and confront truth with unwavering clarity. Because forging a mind so formidable that it commands respect is more than a decision. It's a sacrifice. You will surrender things. You will surrender relationships built on shallow foundations. You will surrender possibilities that demand your subjugation. You will surrender the capacity to find satisfaction in mediocrity. Yet in return, you acquire something invaluable: authenticity, discernment, and commanding presence. You will start to recognize that most people drift through existence in a trance, that your awareness is unsettling, that your resolve causes others to waver, that your silence carries more weight than the noise of countless others. This power doesn't originate externally. It isn't discovered in motivational literature, nor achieved through rehearsed mantras or hollow declarations. It's excavated from the depths of the spirit, in the quiet of challenging hours, in decisions witnessed by no one. It emerges from an inner battle between your former self and your evolving identity. This conflict never ceases because the genuinely powerful aren't those who have triumphed. They are those who persist in the struggle even when they could surrender. Nietzsche had no desire to create disciples. He sought to trigger internal revolutions. He wanted you to cease crawling for validation, to stop pleading for purpose, to stop searching in prefabricated systems for what can only be forged through struggle, effort, and consciousness. He wanted you to become formidable, not in a destructive way, but in an exceptional way. So exceptional that your very being compels others to examine themselves and face what they've been evading. Now, I challenge you to take an action that will cement this transformation. Share in the comments a reality you're exhausted from concealing, a perspective you're reluctant to express, a conviction that leaves you feeling alone, but that embodies your authentic self. This is integral to the journey, claiming your voice, asserting your presence, and beyond that, announcing that you will no longer compromise. If this message resonates with you, click the subscribe button and join the channel. Thank you for your engagement.